Bienvenidos.
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 Welcome to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast.
Here's your host,
Certified Language Coach,
Tamara Marie.
Hola, bienvenidos al episodio 217. Welcome to episode 217 of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. In this episode, we're going to learn Spanish through music by reviewing the lyrics of the song Siembra. Now, this is another classic song. It was actually originally released by Fania Records back in 1978, but it is a classic, so it's one of those timeless songs that never, ever gets old. It's by Panamanian singer and songwriter Rubén and Puerto Rican singer and trombonist Willie Colón. And if you've listened to the podcast before, I'm sure you've heard some of their songs as well. This is an iconic song, and it's really the title track off of what we used to call their album or record at the time. And it encourages people to plant seeds for a better future. So the song really does have a vibe of encouraging you to grow, to move forward, and it really did become an anthem for social justice movements. So I thought that it would be great to share the song with you. And as always, if you want to listen to the song, make sure you go to our website, learnspanishconsalsa.com/217 for episode 217 of the podcast. We will be including the video to the song with the lyrics as well. So if you want to get a little more into it, make sure you check out our website. And also, if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, hop over to the YouTube channel where you can actually see some of the lyrics that we're going to be reviewing for the song Siembra. So I will be showing some of that as well on the screen on our YouTube version, which can be really helpful, especially if you're more of like an advanced beginner, and it's helpful to sort of see the words so that you can really grasp some of the concepts here. Then make sure you check out our YouTube channel. As always, first we're going to go through the lyrics of the song. I will give you the translation and meaning in English, and then I'll give you some Spanish words and phrases that you can actually use in daily conversations. So let's get started with the first verse of the song. And he starts out by saying, con fe, siembra y siembra. Con fe, siembra y siembra. So con fe means with faith, and siembra y siembra. So siembra is a word that really means that to plant or to sow, like sowing a seed in a garden. So he's saying sow and sow. So really this is more of a, poetic type of meaning of it, right? We know literally you can sow seeds in a garden, but you're probably very familiar with the fact that sowing seeds is meant to really invest in the future in some way. So he's saying just continue to do those things that will create a brighter future. Then he says, y tú verás, prepárate. Y tú verás, prepárate. So, and you will see, prepare yourself. So this prepárate, this is the mandato or the command tense. So he's saying prepare yourself, like get ready. So it's in that that command phrase. And y tú verás, this is the verb ver in el futuro. So this is the future tense of ver. And obviously for tú, because he's saying directly, he's talking to you. He's talking to the person listening to the song. So he's saying you will see, prepare yourself. Then he says again, con fe, siembra y siembra, y tú va a ver. Y tú va a ver. So this is the simple future. So again, it's another way of using the future tense with the verb ir. So he's saying, tú vas a ver, pero con el acento puertorriqueño o acento del Caribe. So this accent that's common in the Caribbean, he's not really pronouncing vas. So it's more ba. So it's like tú va a ver. So it may sound like it's conjugated for usted, como usted va o él, ella va. Pero en este caso, realmente está diciendo tú vas, pero tú va a ver. Suena así. So it sounds like that when you hear it. So he's basically saying the same thing again, with faith, sow, and you will see. And that's repeated throughout the song. So you'll hear that in the chorus and other parts of the song. It goes back and forth between tú verás y tú va a ver. So it means the same thing. Now, next line, he says, y de acuerdo a la semilla. Y de acuerdo a la semilla. So semilla is a seed, And again, this is a literal seed. So when you're, planting a seed in the ground, you know that it will grow if you take care of it properly. But the seed in this case is more like those actions that you are doing right now to prepare for the future. So again, this is more of a poetic use of it, but semilla you can use also to talk about a seed. And y de acuerdo a la semilla. So this means and according to the seed. So it's basically de acuerdo is also used in conversation to say okay, but it's just saying like according to the seed. So it basically depends on the seed that you're planting or that you're sowing. That is what will dictate your results. So y de acuerdo a la semilla, and according to the seed. Then he says, así nacerán los frutos. Así nacerán los frutos. So he says, so the fruits will be born. So así, which you're probably aware, means like this or like that or so, that way. Again, in this case, he's talking about the results of planting these seeds, and he's saying in that way or so, nacerán. So this is the future tense of the verb nacer, which is to be born. So nacerán is the plural future because he's referring to los frutos. Los frutos. So the fruits will be born. Now it's also important because you're probably familiar with fruta being a feminine word. So in this case, los frutos, he's talking about the fruits of your labor, right? The fruits of the work that you're putting in. So in this case, it's not, talking literally about a fruit. Okay, next line says, nunca olvides a Betances. Nunca olvides a Betances. Now, this requires a little bit of explanation, but let's start out with the first part. Nunca olvides. So he's saying never forget. Nunca olvides. So olvidar is the verb to forget, but because this is a command and he's talking directly to you, it turns into olvides. Olvides, perdón. Olvides in vez de olvidas. So olvides, because it's this command, nunca olvides a Betances. So this a indicates that we are talking about a person. So anytime you see this a before this phrase, we know that we're talking about a person. So this is called the personal a in Spanish, and you'll notice this anytime you're talking about someone else. So if I wanted to say, yo conozco a Maria, I'm saying I know Maria. I'm familiar with Maria. So conozco a Maria. I won't just say conozco Maria. Okay, so that is a difference when you're talking about a person. So because it says nunca olvides a Betances, we know that we're talking about a person. Now, if you are not from Puerto Rico, you probably don't know who that is. So let's just talk just really briefly about him. And again, I've mentioned this before on our last episode. I don't want to get too far into sort of the specifics of politics on the podcast, but I do want you to have some context for a conversation. So this is referring to Ramon Betances, and he was a Puerto Rican medical doctor who lived back in the 1800s. So he was born in the 1820s. He died just before the turn of the century. And he is considered to be the father of the Puerto Rican independence movement. And he's also known as El Padre de la Patria. El Padre de la Patria. So that's the father of the homeland. And you'll hear patria referred to a lot when you hear patriotic sort of sayings from different countries in Latin America. It's referring to your homeland. But in this case, as you may or may not be aware, Puerto Rico is still a U.S. territory as of the date of this recording. It is not a state of the United States. It is also not its own independent country. It has a sort of hybrid status. And you had people for years who have been advocating for the island's independence. So this is one of those people. So he's saying, don't forget about him. All right. So if you're interested in looking more into Ramon Betances, you can do that. Obviously, we'll include some info in the show notes so you can kind of investigate further. But as you can see, like I said, this song has been an anthem for social justice. So he's really saying, don't forget about people who have fought in the past for independence and freedom. Okay, then the song goes on to say, en la unión está el futuro. En la unión está el futuro. So in unity lies the future. In unity lies the future. So está el futuro, like the future is, right? So the future is in la unión, or in the unity, all right? Then again, it says con fe. So we already know that means with faith. Y siempre adelante. Con fe y siempre adelante. So with faith and always moving forward. So this idea of adelante is that we're looking to the future. We're looking at what is coming in the future instead of, being stuck in the past. Okay, the next line is olvida las apariencias. Olvida las apariencias. Okay, and then it starts to say siembra y tú verás again. So olvida las apariencias is forget appearances. So forget how things look right now, basically. And then he goes on to talk about some of those things. He says diferencias de color, which is differences of color. Y utiliza la conciencia. Y utiliza la conciencia. So he says, and use your conscience or your awareness. So he's basically saying, be wise, be smart, use your head. That's probably how we might say it in English, use your head. He's really saying, don't be deceived by the way things look. You want to really think beyond that. Pa hacer un mundo mejor. Pa hacer un mundo mejor. So to make a better world. So this pa hacer, as you're probably well aware, if you listen to the podcast, if you're new, you're probably aware that this pa hacer, it sounds more like paser, is para hacer. It's two words, para hacer. But the para is shortened to pa. And that's common in a lot of spoken Caribbean Spanish. So pa hacer un mundo mejor. So to make a better world. Ya vienen los tiempos buenos. Ya vienen los tiempos buenos. So good times are coming. So vienen is from the verb venir, and he's talking about los tiempos, so the times. So vienen los tiempos, that makes vienen plural. And so, yeah, vienen los tiempos buenos. He's saying good times are coming. So that's good news. And then el día de la redención. El día de la redención. So it's the day of redemption. So I hope that gave you a little bit of a flavor for this song. I didn't go through all of the lyrics, but like I said, again, it will be on our show notes page, learnspanishconsalsa.com/217 for episode 217. Make sure you check that out so that you can see the full lyrics to the song and also listen to the song as well. So now let's talk about a little bit of some of these words and vocabulary that are used in the song and some phrases that you can actually begin to use in daily conversation. So there are some key terms mentioned in the song. So we're going to go through about 9 different Spanish words and phrases that you can use and understand in daily conversation. So the first one is conciencia. Conciencia. And this means conscience or awareness. And it's useful anytime you're talking about social responsibility or just being mindful of things, right? Being aware. So, for example, you could say, usa tu conciencia para tomar decisiones importantes. Usa tu conciencia para tomar decisiones importantes. So use your conscience to make important decisions. That's good advice, right? You could also say, tener conciencia sobre el miedo ambiente es esencial. Tener conciencia sobre el miedo ambiente es esencial. So being aware of your environment is essential. So medio ambiente is sort of like your surroundings. So in the song, Rubén Blades says, usa la conciencia latino. And he's encouraging people to be aware and mindful of the Latin community. So again, that's just, being conscious of who you are in a different way, but you can also use it to talk about things in your daily life. The second word we have is actually the title of the song, Siembra. And siembra means to sow or to plant. So it's used metaphorically in the song to talk about investing in the future or laying down a foundation for success. So here's some examples. Siembra amor y recogerás felicidad. Siembra amor y recogerás felicidad. So if you sow love, you will harvest happiness. Es importante que siembres buenas acciones para el futuro. Es importante que siembres buenas acciones para el futuro. So in this case, I'm saying it's important to sow good seeds for the future. And you'll notice that we're using this verb sembrar, and we are using it in the subjunctive form because this is a recommendation, right? Es importante que. And if you are have gone through our class on the subjunctive, then you're aware that es importante que is one of those phrases that actually signals the use of the subjunctive. In the lyrics, he actually says siembra con fe, so sow with faith. So that's just a hope and believe that what lies ahead is really determined by your actions today. Okay, so next, number 3 and 4, we're going to look at those together because they're very much related. So we have cosechar and recoger. So cosechar and recoger are both related to harvesting or gathering. So again, this is part of that process. Sembrar or siembra is when you're planting things, and then cosechar or recoger is when you're harvesting or retrieving those things. So these are also used to talk about the outcomes of your action. So you're probably very familiar in English, the expression, you reap what you sow. So this is like, you can think of recoger as another way of saying reap, and cosechar as well, saying harvest. So these can be used literally, obviously, to talk about harvesting. But in the song, it says los frutos que recogerás. So it's the fruits that you will gather. So this is talking about what you put out will come back to you. And so cosechar is literally used to mean to harvest. But you can use the word recoger in some expressions for daily conversation. So for example, you could always say, like if you're saying that you're going to pick someone up, you're saying that you're going to pick them up or to gather them, right? So you can, the expression is recoger a alguien. So we already talked about that personal a. So in this phrase, we have the personal a, so recoger a alguien, so una persona. So for example, I could say, voy a recoger a mi hijo de la escuela a las 3. Voy a recoger a mi hijo a la escuela a las 3. So I'm going to pick up my son from school at 3 o'clock. Another phrase with recoger is recoger la mesa. Recoger la mesa. And that's to clean or to clear the table. So, for example, you could say, después de cenar, siempre ayudamos a recoger la mesa. Después de cenar, siempre ayudamos a recoger la mesa. So after dinner, we always help to clear the table. And then if you want to say that you're going to clean up your room, which we hope all teenagers would do if you're a parent or if you've been through that phase where you had a teenager, recoger el cuarto is probably a phrase you want to know. So that means literally to clean up your room. So for example, in a question, you could say, ¿puedes recoger tu cuarto antes de que vengan los invitados? ¿Puedes recoger tu cuarto antes de que vengan los invitados? So can you clean up your room before the guests arrive? All right. So in this case, antes de que, we have another use of the subjunctive. So it's a little more of an advanced term here. But antes de que, we're saying before something else happens. So there's a little bit of uncertainty here because we don't know exactly when they're going to arrive. But we also are talking about an action dependent on another action. So I'm saying I want you to clean up your room before the guest arrives. So this is why it says vengan instead of, so this is the verb venir. So this is a subjunctive of the verb venir. So it's an irregular verb. So antes de que vengan los invitados. And it's vengan and not venga because we're talking about multiple guests, los invitados. Okay, so that's a little bit of subjunctive grammar there. Also some phrases that you can use in your daily conversation. All right, now let's move on to frutos. So we also talked about frutos earlier. It means fruits, but not, necessarily, talking about frutas that you would get like manzanas, mango, cosas así. It's the fruits or the results of your efforts or actions. So for example, los frutos de tu trabajo serán evidentes. Los frutos de tu trabajo serán evidentes. So the fruits of your work will be evident or will be obvious. Y es importante ver los frutos de nuestras acciones. Es importante ver los frutos de nuestras acciones. It's important to see the results of our actions. So in Siembra, this is the way that the term is used to talk about the outcomes that result from actions, in this case, to create a better future. Okay, so we also talked about the word fe. And fe is just F-A-A or F-E, very short word, but it means faith. And it's often used not just to talk about spiritual faith, but also, having trust or confidence in things. So I can say, tengo fe en que todo saldrá bien. Tengo fe en que todo saldrá bien. So I have faith that everything will turn out well. A veces necesitamos fe para seguir adelante. A veces necesitamos fe para seguir adelante. Sometimes we need faith to keep moving forward. So in the song, he says, con fe, siembra y tú verás. So he's saying that with faith, you'll see positive results over time. Again, pretty nice short words to have in your vocabulary. The next word we'll talk about is plástico. So we didn't get to this part of the lyrics, but I'll share the part in the song. And obviously, plástico is one of those, words that's easily translated, right? It means plastic. But just like in English, it can be used to refer to other things. Now, I think that generally in English, we don't use this particular term. We might say something is artificial. But in Spanish, plástico can mean that things are fake or superficial as well. So it does have another meaning other than just literal plastic. So in the song, it actually says, olvídate de lo plástico. Olvídate de lo plástico. So forget about those superficial things, right? Those surface things or things that are fake. Things that, may appear one way but aren't real. Okay, so let's look at some examples in more of a conversational context. So you could say, no me gustan las personas que actúan de forma plástica. No me gustan las personas que actúan de forma plástica. So I don't like people who act fake. You could also say, es importante ser genuino y evitar lo plástico. Es importante ser genuino y evitar lo plástico. So it's important to be genuine and avoid the things that are fake, right? Those fake people. And also to avoid the superficial, right? So again, it's really just this call to be authentic and to be real, and to focus on what's important. Okay, two more words, and these again are more related to more social change. So we have raza, which is R-A-Z-A. So that's the way that is spelled. But as you know, in Spanish, la Z suena como la S. So raza means race, and it can also be used to refer to ethnicity. So it's commonly used when you're talking about cultural pride and unity, like in the song. So again, we didn't get to this part, but in the song, it actually says, lucha siempre por tu raza. So that's really a call to stand up for your community and for your heritage. So a couple of examples, you could say, siempre debemos estar orgullosos de nuestra raza. Siempre debemos estar orgullosos de nuestra raza. We should always be proud of our race, of our people, of our heritage. So in lucha siempre por tu raza, always fight for your people. You might also be aware, if you thought you've heard this before, raza is also the name of an organization that does fight for social justice for the Latino community. So raza is one that is important to know. I've also heard it in some other songs as well. I think I've heard it in a couple hip hop songs back in the day. All right. And the last word we have, which you already heard in our last example, is lucha. Lucha. So we had raza, and now we have a lucha. Lucha means literally a struggle or a fight. And it's also the verb luchar, which is to fight or to struggle. So it is usually used to talk about resistance and perseverance, and also just, fighting, fist fighting. But hopefully you don't get involved in any physical altercations, and you'll be using this figuratively. So in the song, it does say lucha, and it's talking about standing up for your community, for your values, for a better future. But a couple phrases that you could use are, la vida es una lucha, pero vale la pena. La vida es una lucha, pero vale la pena. So you can really use this to talk about anything. But in this case, it's saying life is a struggle, but it's worth it. So vale la pena is another very common phrase to say it's worth it. It's like it's worth the trouble. It's worth it in the end. So vale la pena is a good phrase. You could also say nunca dejas de luchar por tus sueños. Nunca dejas de luchar por tus sueños. Never stop fighting for your dreams. And I think that is a really positive note to end this episode, to never stop fighting, to always be looking forward, looking ahead to a brighter future, and realizing that what you do today matters. So again, as always, I want you to check out the website, learnspanishconsalsa.com/217 for episode 217 of the podcast. Check out the song Siembra by Willie Colón and Rubén. I'm sure it'll be another song that you'll love to add to your playlist. And next week, we're actually going to have a rebroadcast of one of our episodes from our Black Expat series. So we did interview several people who are living abroad, and we'll try to get some updates as well, so to kind of check in and see how they're doing now. So tune in next week for some updates on where our Black expats are now. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you found this helpful and inspiring, and that these are words that can help you have more meaningful conversations in Spanish. As always, I hope that something that you heard in today's episode will help you go at least one step closer from Spanish beginner to bilingual. Hasta la próxima.
Thank you for listening to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast at learnspanishconsalsa.com.